Thanks everybody for being on. Thanks again, Jarius Rubin. I'm so pumped to give this talk, and I'm going to give you kind of the 1-minute bio. My sales career, believe it or not, started in 1995. Some of you weren't even born yet, but originally from Boston. And my first 18 years of life, I didn't say a word, nothing, like deaf mute, head down in homeroom, no dates, no dances, no proms, nothing like that. And what kind of helped me get out of my shell, my freshman year of college, I ended up answering an ad from a flyer on the desks that were littered around campus. And it ended up being in sales, and it ended up being selling Cutco knives. I know a lot of you have Cutco knives or maybe even sold Cutco knives. And long story short, the quietest kid in the entire college senior year, I ended up the #1 Cutco rep in the country. I stayed with Cutco for 4 years running sales teams. And then I went to the company with the duck. And some of y'all probably heard of Aflac. If you're not from the States, maybe you haven't. It's a big insurance company here. I spent 13 years with Aflac, somehow made it to #1 in the company with Aflac, 60,000 agents, and I was the top guy. And it's so weird to say that because no one would have ever thought I'd be good at sales. 0 people, not even my parents. And now I run a company called Victory Selling. So we get to teach, train, and coach salespeople from all over the world. And there's nothing better than sharing with people how to sell with honesty, with integrity, with humility, where it's a win-win for everybody. And the world of sales has changed, everybody. I'm sure you all know this. We are not turning back. This virtual world we're in is here to stay. And ignoring reality isn't going to help. Look, I get that many of you want to be face-to-face. I wish we were all face-to-face, and I'm a speaker, do keynotes, travel, all those kind of things. And I love face-to-face, but we've got to play the cards that we're dealt. And it's important to understand that we need to embrace this virtual selling medium we have. And if there's things that aren't in our control and we try to control them, that is not a good thing, everybody. So what should we do? Well, let's control the things that we can control. And it's using amazing tools like Dubb and Zoom and Teams to be more effective. But I want to share a thought with you. And Henry Ford has said many amazing things, but this one really applies to virtual selling. If you think you can do a thing or think you can't do a thing, you're right. And I've trained thousands of salespeople, and I see so many of them that have this self-limiting belief of, I'm only good when I'm in person. Well, if you believe that to be true, it's going to be true. If you believe you can give an engaging and a valuable and a exciting presentation over virtual means, you're going to have an amazing career, an amazing year, an amazing life, an amazing business. 99% of my clients, everybody, I've never met in person. 99%, because most of it's done virtually. So if you don't know the numbers, and by the way, everybody, these numbers are just the United States. How many daily users on Zoom today? 300 million. How many on Teams today? 125 million. So we're about 500 million people using this medium right now. And this is where people are, everybody. It's so much easier to do virtual meetings today. But I'll ask you, are you or your teams utilizing video? Are you utilizing things like Dubb to make yourself so much more trustworthy and of value and somebody that people want to meet? Are you proficient on this medium, which we'll get into in a second? Are you embracing reality, or are you just sitting around twiddling your thumbs waiting so we can get back in person? Probably about 2 months ago, where I spoke with 7 clients in 7 countries on 5 continents in one day. Where are you going to be able to do that other than virtually? And are you skilled in the psychology and the demands of the 2021 consumer? People are craving personal attention, and video is a great way to do that. And that's why Dubb is such a great tool. So let's dive into, how do we build this trust when we can't see, touch, feel someone 2 feet away? The first step is you want to connect before the meeting. Always connect before the meeting. I don't just mean sales meetings, right? This could be a prospect meeting. This could be a one-on-one meeting with someone on your team. This could be a networking meeting at the chamber. This could be a potential strategic partner meeting. You want to make sure you're connecting with that person before you ever start that meeting, right? Think of the meeting as a blind date. People just show up. That's not good, usually, guys and gals. So how do you connect? Send an email, send a text, make a phone call, do something on LinkedIn. Clearly, we get to use Dubb as a tool in many of these aspects, but sometimes you can just pick up the phone and call somebody. But the most important thing, everybody, is not just show up to a meeting. And a lot of salespeople wonder why their sales are struggling more now because they're not in person. This is why. We don't have the amount of time we used to build rapport with people. So it's really critical that you utilize the time before the meeting to build that rapport. So here's one example, everybody, of what I send. We typically work with corporate sales teams. We work with a lot of individuals as well. But before I do a meeting with a CEO, I send an email like this. Hey, Darius, here's a couple things that'll make our call on Thursday much more productive. Shouldn't take you very long to take a look. And I send recent testimonials. How do I send those? Video. And guess one of my little call to action button is on my Dubb account? Video testimonials, not written, video. I send them a version of my sales team audit. So they actually complete a little questionnaire that tells me where their challenges are with their sales organization. So I'm kind of doing discovery before I ever have to do that in the sales meeting. I send them a couple other little clips about how we help companies, how we help them hire amazing salespeople, how we help them figure out their salespeople's sales DNA. And then I give them a test drive of my back-end training system. So they get to go through the system, the curriculum, see all my live videos, my quizzes, my interaction, and so on. I'm doing all of this, everybody, before I ever start that prospecting meeting. And the reason I do this is because most salespeople yap for 30 minutes when they first start a sales meeting, talking about features and benefits, how great they are, all that kind of stuff. You don't have time for that anymore in the virtual world. So if you can get all that stuff done, you can create credibility, you can show your value, you can find out their pain before you ever open your mouth in that first meeting, you're already way ahead of the game. And when it comes to first impressions, everybody, they are more valuable today than they ever have been before, ever. We have less time to make a good first impression. That's why you've got to nail it. More importantly, if it's all virtual, we are missing, right, that feel. We're missing that human connection. So you've got to be great virtually to build that trust so you can have a great first impression, and that can last throughout your conversation with them moving forward. The second reason we want to connect is because it will familiarize them with you, which is, Ruben had mentioned, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with all of you and be able to share ideas and thoughts with one another so we can grow. If we get to do that before we ever meet for a sales or prospecting meeting, your connection is going to be so much stronger. Trust is much easier to build. And the last thing is third-party credibility. Ladies and gentlemen, this is probably the most powerful tool that most salespeople don't use. Third-party credibility is what other people say about you. See, most salespeople want to talk about them, how great they are, how amazing their company is, how unbelievable their product or service is. But they don't have the credibility to do that because they're a salesperson. Of course, they're going to say that. Well, what's better? Having raving fans telling your prospects how amazing you are. And that's why getting as many testimonials and recommendations as you possibly can is a good idea. And on LinkedIn, if you don't know, all the way at the bottom of somebody's profile, live where all the recommendations are. And a couple tips for everybody, and by far, go on mine, look at it, copy it, emulate it, do whatever you like. You've got to get recommendations on there, as many as possible, because that's where people go to see, does this person really have credibility? Do they know what they're talking about? Have they helped other people in this space? So you want to have a couple things on there. Recent testimonials and recommendations. Recent, not one from 2013. Recent. And number two, they should be genuine. People can see if the testimonials and recommendations are fake. So what I love about the recommendations on my profile is that 95% of them were organic. People just put them up. But there's a way that we teach how to ask. We don't have time to go in today, but if you have people just willingly putting recommendations on there for you, that tells you you're doing a great job. Same thing with 5-star reviews, Google reviews, Yelp reviews, all those things. People look at those, everybody. So you want to get as many recommendations, testimonials, letters, video is ideal. And then you get to utilize that in your communication, both pre-meeting communication and follow-up communication. And that's another cool part about Dubb is you can have all those video testimonials recorded, and then you can use those in your communication with clients. Here's tip number 2, is you've got to harness the power of world-class communicators. And one of the things that world-class communicators do is they realize that they're in the spotlight and you are in the spotlight. And I know we may not be able to see everybody on this particular webinar, but in general, when you're doing Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, whatever else, platforms you use, just to let you know, your camera is not a two-way mirror. We can see you. So there's a medical condition that I actually invented, but it's a true medical condition, and it's called resting Zoom face. And many people have this. And just some words of wisdom. If you look like this, if you look like you just murdered a family of 5, that's not good for business, everybody. You can't look like this. So when you're in a Zoom meeting, you're participating, even if you're not talking, just smile and look in the camera and be a normal person. We can see you. I want you to pay close attention to a couple things. Number 1, our facial expressions. The best men and women poker players on this planet do not play their cards. Okay, they look for tells. And what is a tell? A tell is a facial expression, a mannerism, an eyebrow raise, an eye blink, a pulse. They know whether or not you have a big hand. And what's important to understand in sales is that most salespeople are oblivious to these signs, when in reality, about 75% of communication is nonverbal. So if you're not paying attention to their nonverbal cues, you are losing. And a big part of this, everybody, is you have to be able to see them to see the facial expressions. So when you do virtual meetings, the camera must be on. Those of you that run teams, have employees, salespeople, whatever, if people aren't on camera, here's my advice to you. You don't work here. That's it. If you're talking to somebody who doesn't have their camera on, what are they telling you? And it's really weird because if you did this in normal life, you were in a meeting, big prospect, or maybe it's somebody on your management team, CEO, they're talking to you and you do this. Ruben, sounds really good, man. Definitely painted. What would you think? You got to understand, everybody, you need to see them so you can see their facial expressions, body language, mannerisms. They need to see you so you can be effective in your communication style. And that's the next point. When we talk about body language, and there's a lot of folks that talk with their hands, a lot of people. If you're sitting down while you are giving a presentation, Zoom meeting, whatever, we can't see that stuff. So you should always be standing when you are delivering a presentation, workshop, sales presentation, whatever it is. If you're receiving it, you can sit. But if you're giving it, you should stand. And there's a couple reasons. Number 1, energy. You're much more energetic, excited, enthusiastic when you're standing versus sitting. Number 2, there's psychological benefits for it, because when you're standing and everyone else is sitting, you're creating, right, that aura of you're in charge. You're the one that they are looking up to. And when it comes to looking up to, and I want you to think of this in terms of if you were at an event and you were watching a play, or maybe you're watching a speaker, why are they always above, right? Why is the stage above? Because people look up at that expert. Well, there's something called framing and eye line. And framing is where you are in relation to the camera. So you can see my frame, there's a little inch maybe above my head, and my eye line is at the top third of the view. the top third, not in the middle like this, the top third. Why? Because it creates that upward look from the audience. Even though it might be two-dimensional, there's a psychological benefit for that. So you want to have your eye line the top third. We don't want to be Wilson, right, from Home Improvement, and you old people know, right? You don't want to be like this. You don't want to be over here. You don't want to be leaning back in your chair. You don't want to be up like this, about this distance, mid chest, so people can see those expressions. Next is appearance and background. And I don't want to underestimate this. This is really, really important, everybody. The way you set up your background gives people an impression of you. Are you professional? Do you take pride in what's behind you? Do they think they can trust you? So what happens if we have a virtual background is we lose all that stuff, number one. Number two, virtual backgrounds, if you do not have a green screen, they don't work, ladies and gentlemen. You have this aura, this outline, or you become the invisible man or invisible woman. And frankly, most of them look tacky. I mean, they don't look good, y'all. So spend some time and set up your background properly. And what do I mean properly? Just don't look like there's a pipe bomb that went off in the background, or that you haven't made your bed in 3 weeks or done laundry in 6 months. Set up a space in your house or your office that looks professional. Have bookshelf, a painting, something, right, that looks like a human being lives there. And the reason that this is important to have a live background with your wall or your office or whatever, we are craving personal attention. We don't want any more fake stuff. We don't want any more robotic things. And that's what a virtual background does. And listen, if your little boy comes running through, with a popsicle and he's covered in, red popsicle juice, that's funny. If your dog jumps up on your lap, that's funny. We want reality. I was doing a webinar like this for a group in Canada, and this was about a month ago. And I'd actually connected with a friend on LinkedIn, never met him, ended up staying at his house for 2 days, and it was amazing. And now we're best buddies, but I needed to run that meeting from his office. So he has a dog named Guinness, black lab. And I was hanging out with the dog all night, and we were buddies too. So the next morning I have to do this webinar, and there's glass doors on the side, and Guinness is waiting there, whimpering. He wants me to come out. Middle of the webinar, he breaks into the office, breaks the lock and some of the glass, and jumps up on me during the webinar. Hundreds of people. So I start laughing. I'm like, hey, everybody, here's my co-host Guinness. Everybody get your dogs, get your pets, just get them all. So everybody brought all their pets and dogs on the call, and it went amazing. So again, we want real, we don't want fake. So that's why I'm not a big fan of the virtual backgrounds. Lighting, really important. We get proper lighting. And Ruben was talking about he had to put his lights on. It does not cost a lot of money to get great lighting. I have studio lights on either side of this, plus a little desk lamp light above. And those studio lights were maybe $150. I can turn the tone, the yellows, the whites, and so on based on the way that the lighting is in the house. I got blackout curtains from Walmart for $10. And it's important that we spend money on our businesses. Every business understands you've got to spend money to make money. But if you're one that does a lot of business virtually, you have to invest in your craft. People spend $1,600 for an iPhone they don't know how to use, and they didn't know how to use the last one, and they spent $1,600 for that. Everything in this office here, everything that's in here was probably $800 total, including the external camera, including the little stand, including the puck lights. And one thing I wanted to show you, I got these little puck lights. You can see them above here. There's different colors. There's blue at the top and there's white underneath. Then there's lights near that sunflower. There's a light over there behind the plant. You want to create depth, and you can only create depth with proper lighting. These puck lights were probably $20 for 4 of them on Amazon. It's little things like that. Lastly, you got to make sure, y'all, you're looking into the camera. We're 15, 16 months into this thing, and people literally still look at the pictures. I'm talking, you should listen to me. Look in the camera. You can hear people that are comment. You do not have to see them. You are the presenter. You are the one that's on stage. You have to look in the camera. And it's very easy, y'all, to click a button and go off camera, just like it is to click a button and mute. So one last tip on the camera thing. I don't need to see you feeding your face. So if you want to go eat spaghetti and meatballs, go ahead. Not on camera. We can see you. So hit the button, put your camera off, hit mute, take a bite, come back on. You've got to understand, y'all, you giving an impression that you're not paying attention is not good. Do you know how many times I've seen people literally stand up and leave, or they're on the phone, they're muted, but we can all see you on the phone. You are shooting yourselves in the foot, and I cannot tell you how many sales, deals, relationships have been lost because people don't pay attention. So here's a question for you. Have you watched your own Zoom meetings or your team's Zoom meetings or webinar teams or whatever you use? Have you watched them? See, if I ask the question, I ask this a lot. Do professional athletes watch game film? Clearly, the answer is a resounding yes. They watch 10, 20 hours a week, roughly. Professional athletes, let's just say they watch 10 hours a week of game film. The average professional athlete across all four major sports, we're not even talking about soccer, is about 4 million a year. So if it's good enough for athletes who make 4 mil a year to watch their game film, right? How they threw that pass, how they played in the game last night, right? Were they offsides, onside, all those things. Why don't you do it? Most salespeople literally have never watched one of their own sales meetings, one of their own pitches, whatever you call it, one of their own prospecting calls. You have to inspect what you expect. And if you expect to be great, you have to start looking at yourself and finding out, where could I have improved? What could I have done differently? Tip number 3 is you got to be prepared. And when you're prepared, that creates confidence. And when you have confidence, that leads to competence. And so if we're not prepared, we can't deliver great messages, great value. It doesn't work like that. Go back to the sports analogy. Sports teams don't show up 3 minutes before tip-off. They're there hours before the game, shoot-arounds, batting practice, whatever it might be. So how much time does the average salesperson spend preparing for a Zoom meeting? I'm guessing it's probably 2 minutes. It might be high. You have got to spend time on this, ladies and gentlemen. And, one of the things we teach all our students and clients, we have this thing I built called the Prospect Research Checklist. And this thing is unbelievable. And it literally tells you what you need to look up about a prospect before you do it. And what do you think of people who are always late, who are always running around with their hair on fire, who are always the one to miss things because they're not prepared? That's not a good impression to leave if you're a salesperson, if you're in business. But if you prepare, you will set yourself apart from everybody else astronomically. Give you a quick case study and tell you about the $1 million hat. If you don't know this hat, this is San Francisco Giants, Major League Baseball here in California. And what's funny about this hat is this little tiny hat is responsible for a potential huge deal. So I taught this gentleman about the prospect research checklist and what to do. So he started doing some research on the prospect and found out that this guy was a huge Giants fan. Well, how did he find out? He went on to Facebook. It took him about 7 seconds, and every post was about the Giants. So he knows this guy's a Giants fan, is a CEO of a company. He goes into the company, the warehouse. Behind the counter is this CEO with the Giants hat on. So he shouts out, he goes, "Hey, Tom." Now, when somebody shouts out your name, clearly you think they know you, and you go, "Hey, what's up?" And he goes, "Hey, Tom, you don't know who I am. My name's Don, but I wanted to see if you had just a couple of minutes because I stopped by." Anyway, because of that interaction, they are now working on a $1 million contract. Now, it's not converted yet, but they're in the process. And I don't know what y'all's businesses are, but what would $1 million contract do for your business? And the only reason they even have that potential opportunity was because they prepared. Don spent time to research the prospect before the meeting. Very important, everybody. We'll kind of end on this, which is one of my favorite Abe Lincoln quotes of all time. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. Are you spending time sharpening your axe? And by sharpening your axe, I mean, working on your virtual presentation, working on connecting before the meeting, working on delivering a great quality video, utilizing things like Dubb to build that connection, trust, third-party credibility. Are you sharpening your axe, or are you just showing up hoping to sell something? So here's a couple corrective actions. So number one is you've got to commit to embracing this virtual selling world. Hold yourself accountable to getting good at this, because this is not going away, everybody. There are way too many advantages for being great at virtual selling and delivering powerful messages through this medium. Number two, commit to reviewing your entire virtual selling process. I mean, if you really want to change your results, start looking at what you deliver. Are you prepared for whom you're speaking to? Do you have the proper equipment to give yourself the best chance to win? Are you doing proper research on the prospect? Are you connecting before the meeting, or just showing up to a Zoom 12 seconds before it starts? And number three, invest in your craft. Like we talked about before, people spend $1,600 for a device they barely know how to use. They'll spend $5,000 to go to some weekend event and break some boards in half and walk on some fire, and they think they're going to be rich on Monday. No, invest in the equipment that's going to help you set yourself apart from everybody else. But all this stuff only matters, everybody, if you want to be world class. If you want to be mediocre, that doesn't take any time. Just show up, use the camera that's installed in your laptop, and just go with it. But if you want to be world class, you've got to do what world class communicators do.